I'm so happy to have this fucking candle.
I know, right?
Nuestra Señora de Fatima. This is a great.
That's your Christmas present.
I got a gift. Got a gift from Boris today. It's our special demon candle.
He does have Our Lady of Fatima candle now.
I'm tempted to even leave it in the studio, but I want it at my home so bad.
Oh no, you need it in your home.
Yeah, but it matches also my Demon of Fatima.
Oh right, because you have the prayer card
myself.
We're really decked out now.
Yeah. I've got Demon of Fatima shit in Spanish and Italian now.
Nice. There we
go. Yeah, let's get some Gaelic next, huh? Nostra Signora di Fatima, yes. All right. I'm ready. I've got a fucking Demon of Fatima candle in one hand, a prayer card with a silver medallion in the other.
There you go. I mean,
what could happen?
You're the resident Catholic on the show. You need to represent that.
Sadly, I forgot my belt. Otherwise, I would do it like a scapular and just tug it tight till I start to bleed. I don't know if she's going to be happy without that. She does crave blood.
Yeah, she does crave blood.
As we remember. All right.
Satisfy her bloodlust.
Nuestra Señora. Oh, let's start the show.
Yay.
Welcome to The Empire Never Ended with Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
Hey.
All three of us back in the studio again.
In the studio.
You said doo-doo like 5 times.
Did that on purpose.
All right. Yeah, the magic is back. All right. Obviously, a lot's happened in the U.S. between the last time and now, but I think I should,
This is the first episode we record since the Golden Age.
Since the Golden Age began.
Golden Age began.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it turns out, Ganon and Evola were right.
They did it.
After Kali Yuga, there's the Golden Age.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. And
we learned the difference between a Roman salute, a Nazi salute, and autism.
Yeah. I think we specifically didn't learn that difference.
Yeah, there is no difference.
Yeah, you didn't.
That's what happened there.
I was convinced by the arguments.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't say what the difference was. It's just that it wasn't a Nazi salute.
Well,
it looks exactly the same.
He's also not actually fucking autistic. So, I mean, it's not like you got to pick your knot there. But anyway, what I wanted to say was we can actually kind of save that because we've decided that we're going to be giving you guys a lot more news apps.
And on Patreon.
On Patreon. And hopefully doing that every month. So if you're not already on the Patreon and you do want to hear some sparkling commentary on current events, fucking sign up already.
Mm-hmm.
Do it.
Because today we're back in the time machine again. We're back in the DeLorean. We're hitting 88. And going back to when now and who.
Well, I was thinking actually that maybe today's episode we can actually call National Renaissance Party Part 2.
Oh, there we
finally.
go. See, I have no idea what the fuck this is about. I was asking him, are we doing aliens? He's like, maybe. Satanism is a no. I don't know what to expect from this dude.
Psychedelics, I know for sure, are involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
But I didn't expect to finally have the sequel to the National Renaissance Party.
Well, I decided this maybe makes sense.
All right.
So because we did one, and then when I wanted to do the second one, I realized the story about Fred Weiss and H.K. Thompson is a lot bigger than National Renaissance Party. So those were the Spider in New York City episodes, which are very related to the National Renaissance Party.
Right.
But now this episode will focus on a very enigmatic, mysterious guy who had, appropriately many names, but his Nazi name was Mana Truhill.
Okay.
So we mentioned him before. He first appeared, I think, in our episodes when we were doing a series on Yockey, Francis Parker Yockey, when I was reading Kevin Coogan's book, Dreamer of the Day.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like that book, it's a huge book with many, many characters, very weird ones. And one of the weirder ones was Mana. I think I will call him Mana because that was kind of a name that he used throughout his life, even when he changed his last names and so on. He was always Mana.
And in proper Tenepod form, we teased a character and said that we would get back to him, and then like 2 years later, we did.
We fucking did it, though.
Yeah.
That's what matters here.
Yeah.
You know, quality takes time.
Yeah. And why it's also appropriate maybe to call it the National Alliances Party Part 2 is that Mana actually, for a time, was a kind of a number 2 in the party. He was like...
Wait, like when Boris was saying doo-doo earlier?
Yes, exactly. I mean, yes, of course. So he was a leader in the party and he was the head of the overseas department. And as we know, that means that he's the department was only him.
Right, of course.
It was that kind of an organization.
A tea party.
Yeah. I love it when parties have departments like that are just one guy.
Yeah. But he had his whole other life that I'll discuss later on. I won't tease it now. We'll talk about it in the second half of this episode. So I also, for this episode, I'm using 2 books as source material. One is the already mentioned Kevin Coogan's Dreamer of the Day that focuses on Yoki, but has lots of things on Mana there. That will mostly be used for his Nazi career. And then there is another book that I will mention later that I use for his very weird post-Nazi career.
Okay.
Well, post is like...
That's always up in the air.
Yeah, that's a question, but we can discuss that at the end of the episode. So, Coogan, in his book, he didn't know much about his like pre-1950s life. So I will like give 2 stories, one coming from the first book and then the other one coming from the second book. There is like partial overlap between them, but we'll decide in the end who this guy was, or if we can even guess that. So the other name that he used a lot, which is possibly his real name, and some people don't think that this is even his real name, was Emmanuel Trujillo. Sometimes Emmanuel is spelled with an E and sometimes with an I. Especially in his second life, he used Emmanuel with an I.
Okay.
Trujillo. So
probably because of the VHS series, Emmanuel.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody remember that?
No.
It's like 90s softcore.
Oh, okay.
I think that was what it was called. Fuck.
Yeah. So Mana joined the National Alliances Party in 1953. He at the time he used the name Mana Truhill. He was also known as Cochise, I guess, is his nickname.
So but do we just kind of straight up not actually know for sure what his like birth name is at this point? Is it just lost?
We don't know. Like so, I read 2 books by 2 different guys who researched him, and they're not too sure. They mention different options there. And that some people think that Emmanuel Trujillo is also like a fake name.
Cochise or Cochise is apparently a leader of an Apache group.
Okay, yeah. He always claimed that he was an Apache. But Cochise was his biker name because he was also in New York City. He was a member of a biker gang.
All right.
In the 50s. And that was his biker name.
Man, we haven't had many bikers yet, and that's
not that many. No.
Surprising.
Yeah, I guess because I'm scared of him.
Yeah,
more than I am of like David Myatt.
Yeah. Myatt never claimed that he was a biker, right?
No, but he did master the Oriental arts.
Okay, that's not scary. So Mana claimed that he had.
I'm sorry, I just got the image of Myatt in like a tweed suit on on a Harley.
Yep.
Like a vest over it, but like he's still wearing the tweed suit and the hat.
He does ride a bike. I can see him calling it his chopper.
If you're reading this, the bitch fell off.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay. Mana Truhill, or
whatever the fuck his name is.
Truhill. Yeah. He claimed that he was born in Pennsylvania as the son of a full-blooded Apache and father and a French mother. He said that he was orphaned and then adopted, and that he ran away from his adoptive home. He claimed that he joined the Merchant Marines. This is what Coogan tells us.
Mm-hmm.
And then later enlisted in the U.S. Army Airborne Division in 1948.
Okay.
But was mastered out after getting hurt in a parachute jump. After that, he moved to New York, and he enrolled in the Communist Party-run Jefferson School of Social Science.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then joined the Neo-Nazi National Renaissance Party.
Wow.
Okay. Already off to a good start.
Yeah,
here.
let's go.
So we talked about the National Renaissance Party. What was specific about them was that they had this pro-Soviet line and pro-Stalinist line, because they made, Fred Weiss, who was kind of behind-the-scenes guy of a party that was officially run by a very weird guy called James Madol.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they believed, the Stalinists were kind of the return to Russian nationalism, or like Eurasian empire, also like Mongolian stuff. They had weird views of Russians, but like that's a good thing. And it was like anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish, which is also a good thing.
Uh-huh.
And then, kind of the earlier version of what Nazis today call like cultural Marxism, or like the things that they connect the Frankfurt School to.
Yes.
Back in the day, they connected Trotskyites to.
Right.
So the Trotskyists were like the bad guys, and the Stalinists were the good for these people. So in that way, they were like very strange for American Cold War era Nazis.
Sure.
And they actually had connections with Stalinists, with the Communist Party of the USA.
How much of this was just like Trotsky's a Jew or anti-Semitic thing? You know what I mean? Like, what was that's it? Is that the whole
That's it.
turn of it? They didn't have like a theoretical, whatever, tactical issue or anything?
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know. Like, they didn't have like a left critique of Trotsky. It was just this.
No,
Okay.
they're a bunch of Jews.
Yeah,
Who want to subvert our Aryan society.
And since like Russians to them are like kind of Asiatic people anyway, them becoming anti-Semitic nationalists is a good
thing.
Yeah.
Because they're
exactly
fundamentally connected to the East and to the Mongols.
Yeah. Because they wanted to, adopt a pro-Soviet, pro-Stalin line, but also remain anti-communist in a sense. So everything that they would say up to that point is connected to communism. Now they connected to this specific sect of communism. And they say, this is the Jewish subversive part, And also, like, they would, like, then connect this kind of subversive side of communism to groups that had nothing to do with communism, like liberal anti-fascist groups and so on, like, classical American anti-communists like Birchers would anyway.
Sure.
So at the same time, they can accuse of, ADL of being communist, for example, and support the Communist Party or the Soviet Union. Right. Because these are Jews. So they're the bad communists, although they're actually anti-communist.
Well, is this, I guess, this is part of connected to that kind of Spenglerian idea of like the Magian culture not having like a real place, being primarily a nomadic, somehow spiritually nomadic people, as opposed to the Russians, which I think were associated with the idea of the flat plain we've talked about before. Hence, like communism for them is fine because genetically they're a communist horde anyway. So that just makes sense for them. Yeah.
In some way. Although this is a different communism than the subversive Jewish cosmopolitan one.
Well, yeah, because that has no root.
And it's kind of a similar logic, like why today some Nazis can like support Israel but also be anti-Semitic at the same time.
Right.
It's the same kind of difference. These are the Jews who, like Stalin, they found their place. They made a nation state.
Yeah.
And so on. They are rooted. They're not cosmopolitan, and they're like nationalist.
It's legible now in that worldview.
Yes.
But also let me just add to that, because we just finished that fucking horrible book Hunter on the Patreon, that soul killing fucking book. But that's an example of a Nazi that was very, very anti-Israel, but nonetheless is incredibly jealous of what was achieved there.
Yeah,
and
well,
basically wants to copy it.
That's. But today, like these people would make this difference with, they can support Israel, but also be kind of classically anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
and say how
they're called evangelicals.
That's one thing for sure. Yeah, but also I'm talking specifically about these kind of Nazi types. And then the other Jews would be the subversive ones who completely overlap with what they talk about when they mention the Frankfurt School or cultural Marxism and so on. Yes. The ones who promote gay stuff and destruction of the family and so on.
They're very simple people, these Nazis, aren't they?
Yes. So Mana turned his apartment his New York City apartment into the overseas office of NRP, similar like Madol's apartment was the headquarters of the party.
Sure.
So it was kind of a weird place because of all of the connections that he had. So there was like a constant procession in and out of the apartment of Stalinists, uniformed Nazis, like bikers, so on. Even some ballet dancers that he met somewhere.
So he was a connoisseur of the ballet as well.
Well, if you remember, the guy who formed their like uniformed wing, an ex-Marine, and trained the NRP like security echelon, he left the party to become a professional ballet dancer.
Yeah. So this is very weird. Yeah. I would really never guess that.
Yeah.
Ballet connection to, like a National Renaissance Party.
And a Marine.
And a Marine and a biker.
Yeah.
I think National Renaissance Party is really, they get like a Dark Horse Award on the show for just being the guys that came up from behind with some baffling surprise.
They were on that weird shit like early on.
Yes.
Yeah. There's like usually when they want to describe how his apartment was weird, they mention this guy, and it sounds like some kind of a racist rumor, but they describe one of the visitors to this apartment as like a Jamaican medical student from Columbia University who had kept parts of cadavers in his icebox.
Okay.
Sounds like, I don't know, weird.
I knew a guy who used to walk around with dead frogs and mice in his pocket occasionally because he worked at a medical lab. And
I don't know, this to me sounded like a bit, it could be like, like some like white people imagining like a voodoo doctor. Something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. Whatever. So I think I mentioned before that in his, apartment / office, he also had like a picture frame with interchangeable portraits of Hitler and Stalin, depending on who was visiting the apartment.
Wait, was there like, do you know if there was like a cool mechanism? Like, would he like,
I don't know,
make like a roller? I'm picturing a roller, and he like rolls one out and the other one comes in.
We can imagine that, yeah.
I would love it if he actually dug out enough space behind the wall so he could just smack it and it would like spin around for a while and then rest. And the International would play, or Horse Vessel lead, whichever hits.
Well, probably not International. It would be like, the Stalin, he introduced the new anthem of the Soviet Union.
Oh.
Yeah. The International was the anthem up until
like the 50s.
Sometime in the 30s.
Uh-huh.
Which also is a nice illustration of the difference between two kinds of communism.
Sure.
So he also had like, for some weeks, but this is the important part of, I think 6 weeks or something. He was in a relationship with a woman called Pat Ward, who was apparently like a call girl. And that's like an important part of this whole story. And allegedly she would, I don't know if this is true, but she would like often be naked there in the apartment with all the guests there and so on. It's like, it's usually how
they're doing like an Eyes Wide Shut thing.
I don't know what they were doing. Also, I'm not sure if this was true. I will later say why, because this information also comes from Mana as well.
Oh, okay.
And he's not to be trusted at all.
We don't even know his fucking name.
Yes. So Ed Fields, Edward Fields, the doctor, a chiropractician who was one of the leaders of the National States Rights Party.
Yeah, famous talking horse.
At some point in 1954, visited Mana's apartment, and he was not pleased what he saw there. There was like a hammer and a sickle and a portrait of Stalin. And there was also like a framed portrait of a black man.
Yes.
And Mana told him, this is my best friend. And actually the black guy whose picture Mana had was called Doxy Wilkinson. And he was a well-known member of the Communist Party.
How about that? This is like a reverse National Youth Alliancing somebody.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Ed Field shows up.
Ed Field shows up, like, looks around, and he's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Is that Stalin?
That's crazy.
So Mana never made any secrets about his connection with the Communist Party and specifically to their Jefferson School, to anyone in the National Renaissance Party, especially to the leadership, to Madol and Ed Weiss, and also to H.K. Thompson. And he knew all three of them. Although H.K. Thompson denied later that he ever met Mana, but there is a photograph of them together, so he lied. At some point, Mana approached the Non-Sectarian Anti-Nazi League and their leader, James Sheldon, and offered to be an informant for them, specifically about the National Renaissance Party.
I'm sorry, is this guy a Fed?
Well, this is what James Sheldon was thinking when this happened, and he was thinking like, what am I getting set up? What is going on? This is very weird.
Yeah,
fair assumption.
But he continued to work with them because apparently the information he was giving was too good to refuse, although was very he didn't trust him.
The Anti-Sectarian Nazi League did put out a lot of text in their heyday, if I remember right. Like they really were like absorbing whatever they could find, so I can definitely believe that.
Yeah. So in a letter to Julius Goldstein in 1953, Sheldon, the leader of the National Non-Sectarian Anti-Nazi League, wrote about this meeting with Mana. He wrote, a man about 28 years of age phoned and later came into the office on Monday, June 15, giving the name Emmanuel Truhill. He described himself as a member of Madol's National Renaissance Party and said that he wanted to help us against the NRP, having learned that such things were bad at the school. And then he asked him, the school?
Yeah.
And Mana replied, yes, the Jefferson School. And I said, well, that's a left-wing one. Yeah. And was thereafter very cold towards Mana, suspecting that he might be some kind of a plant.
Right.
So he immediately said, yes, I'm involved with the Stalinist school, when he went there. So they met later, afternoon, on the same day. So Mana allegedly, according to Sheldon, told him in their first meeting that he by chance joined the National Renaissance Party after seeing James Madol speaking in one of their rallies in Yorkville, and then immediately decided to join the party in order to infiltrate them. So according to Mana, he was never a real Nazi.
Which, okay, I mean, some of the information that we have about the National Renaissance Party comes from a guy who did exactly that. Right?
Yes.
The anarchist guy.
It's true. But Mana was no anti-fascist or anarchist or anything like that. He was just a random guy. I mean, he had a weird prehistory that we learn about that a bit later. But he then just decided to join the party. Although, yes, I guess at the same time or a bit before that, he was already connected to the Communist Party, according to him. So maybe he wanted to do that as a kind of a communist. But this is weird because everyone in the neo-Nazi party knew that he was a so-called communist Stalinist or connected to them, and they were themselves. So it's a bit weird. And then he goes to the Anti-Nazi League and says, yeah, I'm connected to the Jefferson School and I want to be informer for you. But the group that he's approaching is not communist. They're very anti-communist, in fact. So, and Sheldon is warning him about, the evils of communism and so on. So it's weird. And he showed Sheldon a notebook filled with information on Madol's activities to prove that he's sincere. And he would often mention his Communist Front connections to Sheldon. And this also made Sheldon suspicious. like, why is he mentioning this? Does he want us to connect in a way to communists and so on?
It's kind of a potentially bad look as well. If, there's like a Communist Party guy rolling around with the non-sectarians that are there exactly to not be the communist,
Right, they specify it in their name.
Yeah.
After lecturing Mana on, the evils of communism, Sheldon told him, but we have a policy to get our information from whoever wants it to give it to us, so we'll accept you being an informant and so on. So Truhill soon began sending in reports about Madol. One such dispatch was from September 1953 and it detailed his first meeting with Fred Weiss.
Yeah.
In this, he mentions how they discussed, NRP's contacts with actual Nazis in Europe, Argentina, and so on. And Mana apparently also was a German speaker, and he, as the head of the overseas department, would have like direct communication with these Nazis. So he was pretty, kind of in the one of the leaders of the party who had like a very kind of delicate job to do, which is like speak to all of these Nazis, like important ones.
Yeah, I was wondering why they would have made him kind of head of the international office. I figured he had to have known a foreign language or something.
Yeah. And they had like Fred Weiss, who was born in Germany.
Yeah.
And, and like H.K. Thompson, who was like maybe a member of the SS.
Right.
I mean, he does kind of scream like asset in a way, but it doesn't necessarily tell you whose.
Yeah, right. either. Yeah. So Fred Weiss, we have a whole episode on him, as a kind of a man behind the scenes, started using, Mana directly for some task. Mostly contacting various Nazis around the world. So at the same time, Weiss was connected with Yoki as well.
Mm-hmm.
And these connections with Yoki and with Mana were the cause of various Nazis in the New York City scene, let's say, spreading rumors about Weiss being a Soviet agent or like an operative of the Communist Party or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the National Resistance Party, as we know, they didn't hide their Stalinist connections and policy, like pro-Soviet policies. So there's like an interesting detail, not directly connected to Mana, but for example, in 1954, a member of the NRP called John Marshall visited a friend of his, John Hamilton, and his St. Louis-based National Citizens Protective League. These are all Nazis. These two guys, one from NRP and the other from the Citizen Protective League, both used to be members of the Bund in Boston in 1940, which is interesting. So, because before we mentioned how NRP had like ex-members of the Christian Front, part of the Coglins, but also Bundists, and this is like a specific mention of one ex-Bundist who was one of the leaders of NRP.
Yeah.
And so he visited his friend in St. Louis and told him that NRP was working with the communists, meaning Stalinists, because they have the same enemy, meaning Jews, probably.
I mean, that one would imagine.
Yeah. So, according to H.K. Thompson, who spoke to Kevin Coogan, who wrote this book and gave him a lot of information. So, this is how Keith Thompson explained who Mana was. Truhill was just a thug. At least he could read and write. He was a creature of Sheldon and the various ADL operators at the time. The Communist Party would have ran away from him. Of what value would he have been to them? Crazy drug addicts are in little demand. Weiss was foolish enough to maintain ties with everyone on the theory that any kind of action is better than inaction. Truhill wanted to hang with Weiss because he saw a few bucks in it. So, he's very dismissive about this. He was a thug. He was a drug addict. And he was literate. He knew to he was literate.
Yeah.
So there was some use in him, but, he was a drug addict. And it's interesting that H.K. Thompson insists on this connection with ADL and the Anti-Nazi League, but dismisses the connection with the Communist Party.
So it is interesting. Everybody's able to see their own anxieties in this guy when he shows up. Like when I see him, I was like, "Oh, you're a fucking Fed." When these other guys see them, they were like, "Oh, are you like a communist?" And then this person's like, "Oh, are you like secretly a Zog?" Yeah. Everybody's fucking looking at this dude. No one's trusting him.
Although I suspect that H.K. Thompson is not being truthful and honest here.
Well, they have a pattern. You're right. We did talk about how they really messed up the history, the record of their own interactions with each other, probably intentionally.
Right, because they'll cooperate with somebody for a long time, then they have a falling out and they'll just smear them in some...
Or I remember we saw some evidence that they might have even faked falling outs or overstated certain falling outs to confuse people looking on. They were a bit more, I would say, from your telling of it during our Spider episodes, they seem a bit more self-aware of what kind of information they are putting out than most of the people we cover on the show.
And we know that H.K. Thompson and Fred Weiss orchestrated rumors about them in the media that they're in a fight.
Shit like that.
And also Thompson was writing texts trying to discredit NRP while still being in good relations with them.
Yeah.
Saying how they work with the communists and so on. Trying to make some kind of a cover for himself because he was doing the same thing and had this Yoki connection who was working for Eastern European intelligence services. So,
these are very muddy waters.
Yes,
is what we're saying here.
Yeah. So Coogan himself is very confused by these relationships, and he says that Truhill's continuing ties with Weiss are not easy to understand, especially because his cover was blown by ADL in their bulletin in November of 1953. So ADL wrote how Truhill approached them and offered to be an informant for them to inform on the National Renaissance Party. And they just, for some reason that Coogan doesn't understand completely, decided to blow his cover.
Well, they just said approach, or they said he actually did shit for them?
They said approach.
Because that sounds like they're also trying to muddy some waters. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're fucking with them.
Yes. Yeah. But after that, the NRP continued their relationship with Truhill.
Yeah,
after, in an ADL bulletin, it was said that he approached them in order to be informant on National Renaissance Party for them. And then Weiss and the others still have connection with him after that.
Yeah.
So the ADL writes that he shocked them immediately also by saying that he was a communist, and also he mentioned Jefferson School again.
Yeah.
In his first meetings, he always mentions that.
This is kind of fun. This is like a puzzle.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a Rubik's Cube.
So after that, Madol wrote an article publicly defending Mana in NRP Bulletin after other members or people connected to NRP attacked him in the same bulletin. One of the people who attacked him was H.K. Thompson. So H.K. Thompson writes and attacks Mana in the bulletin, and then the leader of the party, James Madol, defends him and says how he's not an informant, but he's a professional soldier of fortune, something like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's just dump a little of this in here.
Yeah. Let me see if I have a quote from Madol here.
If it turns out at the end of this that he didn't even exist, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah, he does exist.
Okay.
So Madol wrote something like this, or exactly like this. This is a quote. The biggest lie in their ADL's November bulletin is the one pertaining to a member of the National Renaissance Party, namely Mana Truhill. I have known Mr. Truhill for quite some time. He's one of the best workers that the National Renaissance Party has ever had. You will find some so-called nationalists such as Mr. Eugene Brand, Edward A. Frankenstein,
yes,
and others who wish no good fortune to the National Renaissance Party, to eagerly carry this vicious, depraved Jewish lie from place to place. Yes.
Well, I don't know. He said it was Jewish.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that was from Madol to...
Madol writing in his own party's bulletin.
Into the bulletin, so to everyone.
Yes, it's a public statement.
And this is at the time when H. Keith Thompson and Madol were still fine together. They were still
they were always totally fine. They never broke.
Right. Okay. So this is they're just fucking with us here.
But other Nazis were furious about this whole thing, and in the end, Madol was they made him kick Mana out of the party. But late as August 1955, Madol was still defending Mana against all the critics, including members of the party, or people who were more kind of unofficial leaders of the party, like H.K. Thompson.
But H.K. Thompson was also not as into the whole Soviet allyship thing.
He was, yeah.
He was
very much.
Right, because he was from the Yaqui.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
No, all three of them were. They had exactly the same policies. Yeah.
Okay.
They wrote pamphlets together. Weiss, H.K. Thompson, Yaqui. It's sometimes even difficult to determine who wrote what.
No, sorry. Yeah. I'm talking about Ed Fields in my head. I was thinking, who's the guy that walked into the fucking...
Yeah. Ed Fields was not. He was,
yeah. He's outside.
Yeah.
But he was also NSRP, no? Or connected?
He was one of the leaders of the National States Rights Party, and for a brief time, I think he was also a member of the National Renaissance Party.
Yeah.
But he was also, his weirdest connection that has a connection to this, Ed Fields, is that if you remember at the end of that episode, we mentioned that his friend was a member of the Fair Play for Cuba committee.
Right.
Yes.
And also Lyle Stewart, the liberal newspaper man who was very tied to H.K. Thompson, was also the head of the New York City branch of that organization.
Right.
So there's weird things there going on.
Thank you for indulging me there. I need these reminders frequently.
Yeah. So there was Coogan says there were the worlds of H.K. Thompson, Fred Weiss, and Mana Truhill overlapped in the strangest ways. So one example, and that's connected to the whole Pat Ward story. That's the one-time girlfriend of Mana Truhill, who was allegedly a call girl. They were together for 6 weeks.
Right.
So one example of how these three men overlapped in the strangest ways was a guy called Sam Roth. He was a famous publisher of porn.
Around when?
50s.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sam was born in Austria in an Orthodox Jewish family and came to the US in 1904 when he was 9 years old. He was allegedly an admirer of Emma Goldman and attended her lectures. But he was also a pretty hardcore anti-Semite, although being Jewish.
Okay.
He despised Judaism, but in 1934 he wrote an anti-Semitic pamphlet called "Jews Must Live," an account of the persecution of the world by Israel on all frontiers of civilization, which was later, until the 90s, maybe even now, republished by Nazi groups. So he was also charged for obscenity by FBI many times, and in 1957 there was a Supreme Court ruling against him, which is very famous because it was important in these obscenity trials.
What, he was showing too much ankle?
I guess, I don't know what kind of porn was this, but he spent most of the rest of his life in prison. Well, he was sentenced to jail at age 64, and the last 5 years of his life he was mostly imprisoned.
Damn.
He was also connected to George Sylvester Viereck.
Oh, wow.
Who was
okay. I'm kind of getting a better picture of what kind of porn it was now.
Yeah. So Viereck was a German spy, a pro-Nazi lobbyist,
socialite, minor celebrity,
who had a Manhattan flat, which was kind of a social place. Involved, he had a lot of friends who were so-called sexologists. So one of them was this pornographer Sam Roth. And Viereck was also a poet, so Sam Roth would publish Viereck's poetry in his publications as well.
Sam Roth like Jackie Treehorn from The Big Lebowski or something.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, people forget that the brain is the biggest erogenous zone.
On you, maybe.
And so we know that Viereck also had a little black book, with names of politicians that owed him favors. So we were speculating, was this some kind of a blackmail circle, the ring going on there?
Right.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, he did have many senators in his pocket.
Yeah. Like a guy, who has
including one of the co-founders of the American Legion.
Yes.
Hamilton Fisher III.
Yeah. So he's a known spy who has a flat in like an apartment in Manhattan, a big one, and is like known for orgies and knowing, important political people and having a little black book like Epstein. It's like, the black book is mentioned like in this book by Coogan that's, much older than the Epstein story. Like there was no association between the two black books back then. But it's interesting. Let's see if I have a quote. So H.K. Thompson also knew Sam Roth, and he would describe him as a pleasant man, a tweedy English gentleman type, but I'm told a literally pirate.
Highest of his balls.
Yeah. And he says how he wrote, Jews must live, which I liked, and I told him so on. So through Roth, H.K. Thompson, Weiss, and Truhill all became acquainted with Pat Ward, which became Truhill's Mana's lover for some time. So why is this important? So in March 1955, Mana contacted George Washington Hertz.
That's a fantastic name.
Who was a lawyer for... So how would you... I just pronounced this Mickey Jelke, but I don't know. It's Jelke.
Mickey Jelke.
Mickey Jelke.
Jelke, I don't know. Does it make sense to pronounce it Jelke? Probably not, but I don't know.
It's America, baby. Our names don't mean shit.
Jelk.
Yeah.
Jelk.
So,
I'm sure it's Jelk.
Mickey Jelk.
So George Washington Hertz was the lawyer for Mickey Jelke, I don't know, who was a high society playboy arrested for running a call girl ring. Okay. And his girlfriend at the time was Pat Ward, and she was one of the call girls. So he was pimping out his own girlfriend, allegedly, because he was rich, but then had some gambling debt, and this is what he was doing. So Truhill contacts his lawyer, and so this was like a public scandal because Jelke was wealthy, and his call girl ring included many like celebrities, including movie stars. So Mana offers his lawyer that he can like hook up with Pat Ward. I think he knew her already through Sam Roth, and that he can help the defense of Jelke by kind of compromising her by recording their conversations and what she says, and to prove that she's a liar or something like that. And he suggested planting a tape recorder in his apartment in order to make some recordings of her.
Mana suggested that.
Totally
a non-Fetty thing to suggest.
Yeah, to the lawyer of this guy. So around that time, Pat Ward publishes like a scandalous book about this whole thing, which is published by Sam Roth, by the way. So in late March of that year, 55, New York City tabloids discover Ward's relationship with Mana, and a photograph of them is published on like cover pages of like New York City tabloids. It's the two of them in like leather bike gear. Okay. They both were kind of a part of that scene as well. So Sam Roth sees an opportunity there, and he asks Mana to write his own memoir of his relationship with Pat Ward that he does, and it's published. It's like some kind of a misogynist book about Pat Ward and their like scandalous relationship of 6 weeks.
Okay.
I think he calls her a violent nymphomaniac in it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So further trying to discredit her somehow.
Yeah.
When Roth told that he offered Mana to write this book, when he informed about this H.K. Thompson and Fred Weiss, both Weiss and H.K. Thompson panicked because they thought that Mana will write about them in that book as well. For some reason, that's what they thought. But when the book came out, there was no mention of them. The book is called I Love You, I Hate You, My 6 Weeks of Free Love with Pat Ward.
Oh, I saw the cover of this.
It's sold on the internet now, yeah.
It's got like a picture of her on the cover.
Yeah.
It's very like
kind
of creepy and doxy looking.
I mean, I gotta say this This is why those National Renaissance Party stuff's interesting, because it's this is a real New York City story. It's all these people who are like in these, they're in these like bohemian kind of circles where they're hanging out with like whatever, this famous controversial publisher / pornographer who's hanging out with the, Apache Nazi who's also in the Communist Party, who's hanging out with, these like esoteric Nazis. It's weird shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like, some of the other guys we talked about in this arc are just like, Asa Carter is just like writing segregation forever and being a Klansman, and
because I was thinking about Asa too. You want to kind of make that connection, with the sort of Native American aspect of it, but they're very different. Very
extremely different. Yeah.
And but who they remind me of is sort of the groups that we're going to be covering in the very near future. Yeah, take us into the 80s and so on. Yeah, so this is quite interesting.
Yeah, so it's very weird. Coogan is also kind of confused by what the fuck is going on here. Sure. So he thinks that one possible answer to the question why Weiss and others continued their relationship with Truhill after all of this is that there was some truth, or a lot of truth, in these stories by other Nazis, that they had some real connections with the Stalinists, and that none of these things really discredited any of them in their eyes. It was some kind of operation they were running together. So right about the same time when Madol published his defense of Truhill, there was a report that Mana made to the National Non-Sectarian Anti-Nazi League in August of 1955, in which he reported about some things that he was doing for Weiss and the National Renaissance Party. And Mana says in this report to Sheldon that Fred Weiss, the Graham eminence for the National Renaissance Party, sent him Truhill to a mysterious mission in Las Vegas. So in it he says, this is a quote from this report.
He's talking about Bat Country.
Yeah, I was about to say.
He says, I'm working with some friends of Weiss in Las Vegas. I'm due to go to Mexico to meet Mr. Bear sometime this week.
Mr. Bear.
Have no need of money as all is paid by them. We'll call you as soon as I can, but it's not easy as Bob, which in brackets says Robert Lober, is with me most of the time. Most of the people I am with are Reds. So this is something that he's doing for the National Renaissance Party.
Fear and Loathing.
This is straight up a Coen Brothers film in general.
As your attorney, I advise you to get a fast car with no roof.
They know Weiss for what he is and are still working with him. I see now they are just as bad as Madol and his boys. We'll call or write as soon as I can. So allegedly so Coogan tells us that there are no more information about this mission in the archives of the Anti-Nazi League. So he doesn't know what was going on there exactly, but it's all very suspicious.
So then all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas with a bunch of Reds.
Yes.
Well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's there you go. That's why we don't know nothing about it.
I didn't mean to imply that Fear and Loathing was directed by the Coen Brothers, really. That was Terry Gilliam.
It was.
If I'm not mistaken. But I feel that there is a Coen Brothers plot line here, that this is a very Coen Brothers kind of problem, where we as outsiders are looking into something that doesn't make sense, but somehow we need to like figure it out or solve it or get on top of it.
If it was a Coen Brothers movie, Truhill and these Stalinists would meet Herbert Marcuse there in Las Vegas, who would be a Soviet agent. You know what I'm referring to.
I'm not sure I do. Where
one of their films has like Marcuse as an actual like Stalinist agent.
What the fuck film is that?
One of the newer ones. I can't remember now.
I'm not caught up then. Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty good on Coen Brothers films overall. So this one I don't know.
Yeah. So now things become even weirder because H.K. Thompson is the one who says all of these bad things about Mana, but he also in 1957. So Mana was in prison in Canada for some drug stuff.
Okay.
And H.K. Thompson goes to visit him in jail. And this is information from an FBI file.
H.K. Thompson was the guy that was also like trying to drag him through
Yes.
the mud before.
Yes.
Right?
He was arguing with Madol in their own party newsletter about whether Mana is a communist or not, or is he working for the Jews,
Yeah, right.
and so on. And now he's visiting him in Canada in prison. So, okay, this is... So there is a file, an FBI file about this visit, which H.K. Thompson had and gave to Kevin Coogan. But he got it from his friend, the liberal newspaper guy, Lyle Stewart, also involved with the Fair Play for Cuba committee.
Yeah.
So, this is all very confusing, but let me see if there's anything interesting in the file. So, redacted indicated that on the February 18th of 57, Keith Thompson, a former member of the National Renaissance Party, and Lyle Stewart allegedly had visited Emmanuel Trujillo in prison in Canada and had negotiated with him for the publication of his story about the dope business. He stated that Trujillo indicated to them that he would be released in the near future. Thompson admitted to Coogan that he tried to visit Mana there and interview him, but that the prison didn't allow him to see him. And then he left some money for Mana, and he said something like I would give anyone who's imprisoned or something like that. So, but keep in mind, he's a Nazi who said that this is like an ADL spy.
Yeah. And what? So he's in jail. He's going to talk about the dope business because what? He's selling drugs, presumably.
Yeah, I didn't get that either. I thought he was just like in possession or something.
No, he was. It's very funny because he was arrested for trying to sell a Canadian cop 300 joints, which is like, okay.
Hey man, I got 300 joints here. A fucking bag full of joints. He was ahead of the game. It was the pre-rolls.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, this guy's got to be like a fucking fed asset. He's gotten caught for stupid shit before.
How about some skag? You want some?
He just seems like a guy that anyone can get anything on him.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah. So,
you want a lid?
For Kevin Coogan, after that, the story of Mana Truhill ends, and he only knows about rumors that he was later in Cuba and had a Castro connection there, which for Coogan is interesting because allegedly Yoki also went to Cuba, and a lot of these people had.
Him and Lee Harvey Oswald did heroin together or something.
I guess so. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Whoever directed was
that's going to be in my version of this in the film version. He's going to be sharing needles with Lee Harvey Oswald. And
I either want like a good movie that you make, or I want the dude that did the business plot film to make this movie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this kind of suits the directional style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So Pat Ward was kind of the key witness in the trial against this Jelke guy, and Mana was trying to discredit her in a few different ways. In the end, the judge didn't allow for the recordings that he, in fact, did made of her to be used in the court. So, I don't know. Coogan is very confused about what he doesn't know exactly what's going on here. But it seems, so we made this connection before when we speculated, because all of them are connected with George Sylvester Viereck.
Yeah.
And we were talking, okay, maybe this is some kind of a blackmail thing going on with himself. And then there is all of these people have a connection with a guy. They're trying to essentially help a guy who's accused of having like a call girl ring, as they call it, which involves well-known people. And for some reason, these Nazis are trying to discredit the key witness against this guy. So I'm thinking the connection there could be that they are both some kind of blackmail operations, possibly. But that's a speculation. But I mean, I don't see any other possible connection. That's just what occurred to me.
I mean, maybe there's some money mix-ups in here.
Yeah.
Who knows what these people are doing to...
Yeah. But then there is this thing that, so Fred Weiss and H.K. Thompson were panicked when they heard that Sam Roth asked Mana to write a book about his experiences with Pat Ward.
Yeah.
Like, why, what? So, and then they were relieved when they heard that there were no mention of them. But if they were, like, what would be the mention of them in that story? So
that's such a weird thing to ask somebody to write a book about 6 weeks. Come on, that's fucking nothing.
I mean, it's also like it vaguely feels a bit like a revenge porn in a way, too.
Sure, yeah.
But also, it was also an attempt to discredit her because he calls her like a violent nymphomaniac and so on. So I don't know. It's I feel there's something was going on here with all of these people.
There's some sort of sketchiness that's being left out of this story that connects them even further.
But it could. There's also like, what if it's just as easy as like they all banged each other and didn't want that to fucking come back at them in the movement or something, Could be anything, really.
Yeah, it could be anything, yeah.
I mean, it could be, but it's interesting.
I mean, if you're hanging with the attic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be offered some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's possible, but they were not like... it doesn't seem they were very worried about it. It's like H.K. Thompson already was kind of... kicked out of the Marines for spanking Marines there.
Right.
But it's in Starship Troopers.
Yeah. So I don't know. And like Yoki was into like BDSM literature and like writing such stories.
Wrote it.
And
exactly.
Yarek was openly like bisexual.
Fucking. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Homoerotic vampire fiction.
It doesn't sound like they would be in panic over that, but who knows?
Well, maybe. I mean, maybe they didn't want it too public.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Or some of the details coming out.
God damn, what a fucking interesting cast of characters this Renaissance party has.
Yeah.
Like everybody, I'm thinking now, everybody's got some weird thing. Like Dan Burrows is in there too.
Okay. So this was the first part of the episode.
Perfect.
And part 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll no longer use Kevin Coogan's book Dreamer of the Day about Yoki for any information. And now we're turning to a different book.
Okay.
Best friends with Coogan ended.
So yeah.
I don't know. I had it.
So I will let you know what book that is in a minute.
All right.
So 40 miles northeast of Tucson, Arizona. It's like highest desert country.
That's prime alien abduction territory out
yes, there is a remote ranch there.
Okay.
The ranch is the headquarters of the Peyote Way Church of God.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
This was the first religious organization to provide psychedelic cactus to non-Native Americans in an open way while being tolerated, at least by the law.
They're going to be cursed by God.
Yes, exactly.
That's for you, buddy.
That's why I want that. So they guided like hundreds of people through these rituals, which they call spirit walks in the desert country. And their teachings are kind of a combination. This is very interesting. A combination of the teachings of the Native American Church and of Mormonism is what we know.
Interesting.
And also of the third components are the insights of their church founder, one Emmanuel Trujillo.
Oh, it's a similar name to somebody else I know.
So all of the information from in this second part of the episode comes from one book, which was published in 23.
Like just now.
20.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So the book is called Psychedelic Cults and Outlaw Churches, and the subtitle is LSD, Cannabis, and Spiritual Sacraments in Underground America.
Let's go.
And the writer is Mike Marinacci.
Marinacci.
Yes.
All right. I trust him instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this book, we learned that Mana was born in 1928. That's according to the church, although some other record says that he was born in 1930. So we don't even know what year this guy was born.
That's as it should be.
Yeah. So Marinacci tells us the 1955 news story says that Mana was born in Pennsylvania, as Coogan told us as well, to a Roman Catholic mother, and given up. That he was given up for adoption to a Catholic couple, and that he was named James Coyle. So he's also James Coyle.
Okay.
Several years later, Trujillo told the Arizona Daily Star that he was born on the state San Carlos Indian Reservation. At various times, Mana claimed that he was 1/4, 1/2, or full-blooded Apache.
This is where that Ace Carter thing kicks in.
Yeah. In 2014, Village Voice stated that Mana's mother was a French-American of Jewish descent.
Wow.
And that his Indian father came from Mexico. The church that he founded, the Peyote Way Church of God, says that he ran away from adoptive home to join the U.S. Army in order to fight in the Second World War. The church says that he was rejected because he was a minor, and then he joined the British Merchant Marine.
Okay.
And that from there he was inducted into the Royal Marines, that he was wounded in a raid on a German ammo dump, that his face had to be surgically rebuilt after that, and that he had some steel in it.
There's pictures of him. Does he look like he's got
I don't know.
reconstructed face? I don't remember that.
So he suffered from PTSD and traumatic brain injury. This is another time we mentioned brain injury. I mean, it was featured in our podcast a few times.
This podcast is basically either trauma or brain injury, and in many cases, both.
Yeah. Just true with serial killers, too.
Sure.
According to the church, all this is church information. He was accepted in the U.S. into the elite U.S. Army Rangers unit, became a sergeant, and trained post-war recruits.
This seems like it would be easy to investigate whether it's true or not.
Well, exactly. Marinacci tells us there are no records of his service. But there is a photo of him in U.S. Army uniform from 47 or 48.
I think I've seen that photo.
Yeah, that exists. He became an artist in this period. This was kind of a post-trauma therapy for him. He became a potter and a painter.
A potter?
Yes. He was discharged from the army in 1948 after a disastrous parachute jump, which left him with fresh injuries. At this time, according to this official biography, he somehow discovered a will of his long-lost late biological father, which left him $30,000. In order to claim this money, he had to get in touch with two of his dad's friends. So he went back to Arizona, and there he met Eugene Joachim and Bill Russell. Joachim was like a white guy, but Bill Russell was allegedly a half Apache First World War vet. Both of these guys were like into peyote, and Russell was a roadman, which is like a ceremonial leader in the Native American church. So they introduced Mana to the Northern American church and the whole peyote thing. And Mana allegedly went to a 3-day vision quest and a fast in the Arizona desert. And the young soldier experienced complete life-changing trip.
I don't know if it counts as a fast if you literally can't hold food down.
Yeah, exactly. And so from that point on, he became a dedicated peyotist, and changed his life.
So did he eventually found a Silicon Valley startup company?
No, he well, you will see. I mean, you already know he
found a religion.
Yes, a religion,
which is better.
Yes. So
tax free.
But he did found like a company in 1948, which is Mana Pottery, which exists still today. Although at that time it was not officially registered as a company. I think only decades later he did that. So since he started Mana Pottery in 1948 until he died, his source of income, most of his income came from selling pottery that he made.
Okay.
So Mana Pottery is actually kind of well known. It's featured in the Smithsonian Museum in their Native American collection.
Wow.
It was also sold by Barry Goldwater's family department store.
Whoa.
And is owned by Whoopi Goldberg.
Wait, what?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Whoopi Goldberg owns Mana Pottery, which is named after Mana Trujillo,
Yes.
Mana Truhill, former member of the National Renaissance Party,
Yes.
Among others.
among
Yes.
other things.
Other celebrities as well, apparently, allegedly own it.
Oh, right. And now you can too for $19.99.
They-
Follow the Tenapod link.
Yeah, they have a website. It's called Mana Pottery.
Let's get them to sponsor us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by Mana Pottery.
Yeah.
Possibly the fourth position.
So in the early 50s, Mana got married and had 2 children, but his marriage collapsed. And he was even jailed for failing to pay alimony at the time. So after that, he moved to New York, and around 1953, he started riding with a local biker gang. And at that time, he became known as Mana Truhill and joined NRP.
It's a pretty good biker name.
Yeah. He also wrote himself an anti-Semitic pamphlet at the time, which is
Because
called,
why not?
Yes, called "Is Communism Really Jewish?"
Oh, what's the answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
But also, this author also tells us that he joined the Jefferson School of the Communist Party.
I guess that gives him like insider credibility, I suppose, in this framework.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. He just mentions that as well. Okay, let me see. So after that, he surfaced in Canada in 1956. Calgary Herald reported that one Mana Pardeachtan, which is also a name he used,
Okay.
was busted for trying to sell 300 joints.
Okay, so that part's definitely true.
Yes.
Okay.
To a cop in Montreal. So this is after this, he was visited by H.K. Thompson
Yeah.
there. By 1960, Mana was back in Arizona, and there was a first page article in Tucson, Arizona Daily Star, which featured a photograph of him, now going only by Mana, with a long hair and Indian headband, creating a ceremonial dish.
Catches the eye.
Yes. In the article, it is said that he's active in the Native American Church as a member. In 1961, he was promoted to roadman, and in the church.
Mhm.
And for the first time, he led a 14-person ceremony. Around that time, he petitioned the church to drop its required 1/4 Native American ancestry for membership and using the sacramental plants.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Now, this was his cause for the entirety of his life, was trying to change this policy of like Native Americans only being allowed to use peyote legally.
Uh-huh.
And so there is this kind of racial thing going on here.
Yeah, it's clearly DEI.
Yeah, exactly. He was refused by the church, so he chartered his own chapter within the Native American Church, called the Native American Church All Race Group, made largely of Second World War and Korean War veterans, which accepted people of any ethnic background.
Interesting.
But the chapter lasted only for 1 year before the Native American Church leaders revoked this chapter and ordered it to disband. So Mana returned to just selling pottery. By the mid-60s, he moved back to New York and started hanging out with Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert and living on their Millbrook psychedelic commune near Poughkeepsie.
Oh, he went out to pasture.
Yes. So he occupied their like fortress-like gatehouse at the Millbrook commune. He claimed
/fortress.
Yes.
Great.
He later claimed that he met Leary for the first time in 1962 and that he gave Leary his first peyote.
Wow.
He also, according to the author of this book, Marinacci, served there as a kind of a token representative of like Native American peyote spirituality for the residents of the commune and also from like New York City underground press that would visit them.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
In February of 66, Mana spoke at a well-attended New York meeting of Leary's Castalia Foundation. So he's a part of like Timothy Leary's movement.
Wow.
You know? During the speech, Mana described himself as a Native American church member, and he said that Leary's foundation should serve the same function for non-natives as the Native American church does for native people, as a kind of sanctifying and supervising their trips using peyote.
So he's hanging out with Timothy Leary and this whole crowd just a few years after this whole NSRP stuff. NRP, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. And in New York City as well.
In the same place. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wild. That's,
Yeah. So some weeks later, the Millbrook commune was raided by cops and feds. One of them, interestingly, was G. Gordon Liddy. He's the guy involved with the Watergate scandal. He was one of the plumbers and so on.
Yeah.
He's in popular media and shows and movies and so on. He's a crazy fascist guy, also a fascist.
Nice.
So Mana avoided getting arrested, interestingly, but he was allegedly scared of what happened and thought that the commune was too fragile to such attacks by the government. And then he teamed up with the co-owner of the Millbrook community, a guy called Billy Hitchcock, who had money, and he moved to West to find a new, better place for their operations. And on behalf of their organization, I guess, or community, in the Southwest, he bought 3 properties for Leary's League for spiritual discovery. But soon they found out the Western states were not much more tolerant of what they were trying to do than the states in the East. So in December of 66, Mana was arrested in Denver, Colorado for illegal possession of peyote. In 67, the judge actually ruled in Mana's favor, saying that Mana used cactus in honest and good faith in the practice of peyotism, a bona fide religion. And this case, People versus Mana Pardeachtan, provided the foundation for the legalization of sacramental peyote in Colorado.
Wow.
In spring of 66, he traveled to Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco.
This gets better and better.
Yes. And the locals were kind of afraid of him. So the anarchist collective, the Diggers, they publicly, they wrote a text and published it publicly, warning people of Mana, saying that he's possibly a cop. But later on, the Diggers circulated another text saying that he's not a cop, that they made a mistake.
God damn.
And they're like, he's got really good acid.
Yes.
And the second leaflet had like statements by various countercultural figures saying how Mana is an okay guy.
That's,
of course.
This is so
not
interesting.
A cop, man. Timothy Leary hangs out with him, dude.
Yeah. Fuck.
So in 68, he returned to Arizona, and he lived on a rich person's called Peggy Hitchcock, another Leary person. She had like a commune in Arizona, and he lived there. But then he moved to 300-acre former ranch, also in Arizona, where some people from Millbrook moved there after their commune was raided. One of them was Bill Haynes and his Sri Ram Ashrama that moved to that ranch. And so Mana was a part of that ashrama thing for some years, I guess. There he met his third wife. I don't know when the second wife happened. I don't know if I missed it. I don't have that in notes, but I think somehow the book goes from first to third.
Yeah, I feel your pain here.
We've
had many wives on this show.
Yes. Yeah. In 1971, so Mana and his wife and 2 other couples co-purchased another ranch called Peaceful Valley Ranch, which was a remote ranch in Arizona.
Okay. It sounds like
and it was there that he introduced Jerry Garcia to Hitler on the astral plane or something.
I mean, I'm sure that happened, although it's not mentioned here. Yeah. So on this ranch, Mana establishes a church.
Yeah.
Which the first version of the church is called the Church of Holy Light. And he dedicates this church to kind of rehabilitation of alcoholics and drug addicts through pottery and pottery making.
I mean, that's cool. Great.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I know.
It's not coming. Like it's
yeah.
He's on a path.
Not a Truhill. Pretty all right so far.
I mean, I feel like if we had a stronger background,
the Jews control.
Well, also, I'd like to also hear from people who have a stronger background in like historical indigenous politics in the U.S. Because I feel like that also changes the view a bit. But as far as our show goes, this could have gone way worse.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So he wanted this church to be completely separate from the Native American church, and without any racial strictures.
They won the all lives matter.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm making a Native American church for white people.
I mean, that's exactly what happened. All lives mattered, and it became legal.
Yeah.
Boom.
It got legal before that. No.
I thought it was him. Church. Before the second church. True.
Yeah.
But it showed him that he could do it.
Yes, sure. Yeah, you're right.
So one of the reasons he wanted the NAC to change their policies because he was worried that his own grandchildren wouldn't be allowed to participate in the sacraments.
Okay.
If they had like some parents who were not native.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have kids with each of his wives?
Well, I don't know. As I said, I don't know anything about the second wife. He had two kids with the first wife. He had one son, at least one son with the third wife, but the son died when he was 4 years old.
Damn.
Around this time, actually, where we are now.
Damn.
In some accident. And was buried at that ranch.
Shit.
His third marriage collapsed after that as well. After the kid died.
Sure.
So October 77 was an important day for year for Mana, or month time, because a newly wed hippie couple arrived to the ranch. These were Matthew Kent and Ann Zapf, I guess. And they experienced peyote for the first time there. And it was a life-changing event for them, like for Mana before.
Yeah.
And they decided to dedicate the rest of their lives guiding others in their peyote trips.
All right.
So they moved in and joined the church and basically became the leaders of the church with Mana from that time until today. I'm not sure if they're alive, but they were the leaders of the church.
Were they like wealthy? What was important about them joining in particular?
Because they now really helped Mana reorganize the church and made it in what it is today. Or since then, it became like a more well-organized group, and they changed the name of the group into the Peyote Way Church of God.
Yeah,
and they became I think since they joined the community, Mana became a reverend. This is the title that he started using from then on, and. The couple, the guy was called Rabbi Kent, and his wife was Reverend Zapf. So they had a rabbi and reverend.
Okay.
As well there. By the way, Rabbi Kent claimed that his first peyote trip reversed his vasectomy.
Wow.
So he was then. He was able to father 3 children.
That's not how that works.
Yeah, well,
it just didn't have
it did for him.
Yeah, the doctor just took his money.
So they were his like most loyal, collaborators, and really kind of reorganized the church. So their kind of mission was to provide the peyote experience to non-Native Americans, specifically. And as I said, they were renamed as the Peyote Way Church of God. So their first move was in December of 77. That month, they registered a declaration of intent in the Graham County Records Office stating that they were stewarding, ingesting, distributing, and growing the Holy Sacrament Peyote as an essential part of their church's beliefs and practices. In 1979, they were registered as an Arizona state corporation.
Somehow, I don't know why exactly, but I feel like there's a lost piece of knowledge in here, a secret yet to be uncovered, where this somehow explains how Germans got dreadlocks. You know?
Sure.
Well, I mean, okay, so I know that if you've spent time in like circles where people do psychedelics, back in the day, people would be like, yeah, man, and it's like, it's fucking legal for religious purposes.
Yeah.
You go to Arizona, man, you can fucking
it's all thanks there. To NRP.
Wow. Which, I didn't expect. I had known this for quite some time, many, many years. And everybody back in the day was like, oh, dude, peyote. And who knew?
Yeah.
Wow. Jeez.
So
thanks, Mana.
But also how important to, I mean, I referenced it earlier, but how important to Silicon Valley is this basic infrastructure, today?
Okay, they're not the only people that do psychedelics.
No, I know that. But I mean, they do it. You know what I mean? They do it so much that it's like destroying certain indigenous infrastructures when they go on vacation,
Yeah.
So in 1979, they also sent a letter to President Jimmy Carter calling him to remove the federal Native Americans only allowed use of peyote, saying no one race can own a sacrament of God, for we are all children of one holy mother and father. So it's interesting that there's a racial theme is throughout his life is present there.
Yeah.
But now in a different kind of weird way, but still.
I mean, so this is even like in his hippie phase.
Yeah. But I mean, now it's kind of, he has this kind of anti-racist thing going on, but like, the Native Americans are being racist.
Right. We want an all-colonizer church of peyote.
Yeah.
Wow. Shit.
They had some legal troubles in Texas.
Okay.
So this is November 1980.
Of course.
Yeah. So the leaders who were the couple that I mentioned, Ken Zaff, and then a deaconess of the church called Nora Booth, traveled to Texas on a tour, which they called Peyote Way Church of. They had they called it a pilgrimage. They were driving in a van that had writings on it that says Peyote Way Church of God, Texas Pilgrimage 1980. So they were stopped by a cop in Texas. And then he discovered that they were carrying 4 peyote buttons each in their medicine bags. By the way, this is interesting. Church bylaws require their clergy, to carry this amount whenever they traveled in the event of imminent martyrdom.
I was about to say they sound like suicide pills to me.
Yeah. Well, Heaven's Gate would, I think they made all their members carry what was it, $3 in quarters or something at all times, and weird shit in case they get arrested. And
they were arrested, and all of the mana pottery they had was confiscated. But they were the day later they were released on bond. And in 1981, the charges were dismissed by the judge again. So a few times
they
now.
get back to pottery, or did some state trooper now sell it to fucking?
He tried, but he grew attached to it, and now
to some A-list Hollywood celebrity.
Yeah. Yes.
So in 1982, the church sued the state of Texas and the federal government because of they said that their rights were violated by this arrest.
Yeah.
And this will be a long court case. I think it was resolved in 1988. So it lasted for 6 years or something
in whose favor, do you know?
I think against the church. Yeah. So, but during this time, in the 6 years while it was going on, the church...
I just picture this fucking Texas fucking highway patrol guy being like, we don't lack enlightenment around here.
Yeah.
I ain't trying to transcend shit.
I did have some sort of vision of how that looked, getting pulled over by these Texas state troopers.
Yeah.
Excuse me, are y'all with the cult?
We're not a cult.
We're an organization that promotes love. And
Yeah, this is it.
So in the 6 years while the trial was going on, the church lobbied various political officials to lift this racial ban, as they call it, on using peyote. They earned some money through the businesses they had, so they were expanding their ranch. They made new constructions for the clergy and the visitors that would come there.
Mm-hmm.
And Mana registered Mana Pottery as an incorporated business in the 80s. So in May of 86, a cop in Arizona pulled over Trujillo for speeding, asked him if he had any drugs on himself, and Trujillo...
I have 30 joints, 300 joints, sir.
Yeah. Well, Mana pulled out a piece of peyote which fell on the ground, and then Mana immediately ate it as a kind of a sign of, he said, respect to the sacrament or something like that.
Good move too.
He was immediately arrested and charged for ingestion of a dangerous drug. He went to trial in 87. One of the witnesses for defense was a famous psychedelic researcher, Dr. Andrew Well, and he was found not guilty.
Nice.
But as I said, the ruling, the big case they had in 88 was against the church. The judge said that these laws were not racist. They were political because the Native American tribes are not just ethnicities, they are legally recognized sovereign nations.
Right.
Therefore, it's not a racist discrimination to not allow non-members of the tribes not to use peyote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, yeah.
But the church continued to use peyote in its ceremonies at the ranch. And in Arizona and 5 other western states, you can legally ingest cactus, even if you're non-native, if you can demonstrate sincere belief in the sacramental nature of the plant.
I've heard this all before.
Yes.
Are we joining today?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the state puts the burden of proof on you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people do get somehow, in legal trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. So in order to provide this, cover for peyote use, the Mana's church developed a ritual which is supposed to prove commitment and discipline, which is called Spirit Walk, and it lasts for 3 days.
Oh.
It also costs at least $500.
Okay.
And it's only available to registered members of the church. You can give more money than that if you want.
This couple that joined the church really straightened things out. I can see what their work here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is pretty well organized.
It is.
Mana definitely needed somebody like that. It is that guy was a mess.
So I'm looking at the Mana Pottery website.
Yeah, how's it look?
It says it has his biography, and it has the whole he was a PTSD World War II vet.
Right.
But then it says he met Timothy Leary in 1962 and introduced him to NAC teepee ceremony, often called the Red Road or Road Meeting. Later, Trujillo introduced artist Salvador Dali to Leary's legendary Millbrook in New York.
Okay.
Trujillo was instrumental to the success of the Summer of Love in Denver, Colorado, where he had a studio for several years.
Yeah. Well, Salvador Dali was also kind of a fascist hippie, so...
Yeah, he was one of the few, modern artists that Franco actually exhibited and kept work of and shit like that.
Well, Dali supported him, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Marinacci tells us that the church is deliberately vague about its doctrine. They say they do not want to create a new dogma. So they encourage you to be faithful to the light within and such things. So they don't really have a kind of precise doctrine about what they're about. So in the last years of his life, Mana assumed the role of a kind of a spiritual elder, is what he was. But in 89, he went back to New York City to take care of his dying adoptive uncle Bill.
Yeah.
And for a short while, he revived his biker lifestyle. In the end of the 80s there in New York City.
Weird.
And he rode a bike with a group called Chingalings. And
what now?
They sound tasty.
Wait, I need to check this. Maybe that's not. No, it's
Chingaling MC, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Seems like it would taste like a spicy what do you call them? Cheeto.
Yeah. And Mana ran a free pottery program for kids in South Bronx while being a member of this motorcycle gang or club.
It was a Bronx-based gang.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the 90s, he was back in Arizona, and he continued to oversee church activities, which was ran really by the couple. And the couple became the face of the church. They gave interviews in the media and spoke at conferences about peyote and so on.
Right.
One visitor told Marinacci, like frequent visitor of the ranch, that Mana was there really kind of a storyteller. He had like lots of interesting tales to tell about his life and the people that he met throughout.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly...
That he would drop a lot of names and so on. That he often walked in the nude, which a lot of people in the ranch did. In the last 8 years of his life, he had to use an oxygen tank to breathe, but at the same time, he smoked a ton of weed.
I was about to say, that's that dirt weed from back in the day. He was smoking hundreds of joints.
Yeah. So he died on July 24th, 2010. And he's buried at the ranch next to his 4-year-old son who died there, and he's buried there. The son was called Byron James.
That's quite poignant, actually.
And the visitors of the ranch are encouraged to pay respects at the grave of the founder of the church.
Let's do it.
Wow. Okay, so there's a big question looming over my head here.
What was this episode about?
Yeah.
Was this guy ever really a Nazi? It seems that like he kind of went through a lot of different phases. No, I mean,
I don't know. This is a good question, and I have a feeling that he was a kind of a Nazi sympathizer throughout his life. So this is the thing. I couldn't find it now, but when we first encountered him, I was searching the web for him, and I found a strange podcast by 2 old guys who were like, I think they were older than boomers, possibly. I'm not sure. Maybe they were boomers, but old ones. And they were kind of ex-hippies. I think one of them was somehow affiliated with the Grateful Dead or something like that.
Of course. Well, I brought up Jerry Garcia earlier.
Yeah. And, but it seemed to me they went really through conspiracy theories into like right-wing stuff.
Also not surprising.
Yes. And they had a whole episode on Mana. And their whole angle was that he was a communist, of course. That what he said that he infiltrated NRP was true, and that he worked for, Jewish communists and so on. But I think they had, I don't remember now exactly, but I think they had some connection with these 2 guys, or at least one of them was in the psychedelic scene. I don't know if he knew Mana personally, but at least knew people who knew him. And he also had like stories about him. And one of the stories, although he claimed that he was, this guy, the right-wing hippie old guy, claimed that Mana was actually a communist and like a Jewish spy or something like that. He also said that he heard from people that in his house at the ranch, in his room, Mana had like a swastika flag on his wall. Like, and they somehow didn't explain like why would a communist have that,
Though, as you say this now, I mean, I could believe it if it turned out he was some kind of like federal informant, but now was hearing this whole story from start to finish, I could also believe, like, since he ended up forming a church and kind of seems earnest about it from the outside perspective that we have here, you got to wonder if the guy was actually sort of looking for that then too. Like he might have seen these things.
Swastikas do appear on native motifs, especially in the Southwest.
There's this.
That's a big thing.
But I'm just thinking maybe this is a guy that looked at the politics of that time as a spiritual journey itself, and he was just like, why not just shove them all together and just see what sticks? Like,
you mean an inside role?
Essentially,
that was. But I'm struggling to figure out which one of these kind of personas from that time period was real, whether he was an infiltrator in some ways. I mean, because we already know that like they were infiltrated and that there were people like the guy that we got all that other information from, that anarchist dude, he was head of their student division or whatever. So they would just appoint people to, and that guy was never a Nazi. But it seems like he did believe, maybe he was like a true believer for some time. But whether or not he stopped ever being one.
He was doing he was not only a member of the party, he was connected with the kind of gray eminences of the party, unlike the anarchists who infiltrated them. He had a connection with Fred Weiss and with H.K. Thompson, was in contact with actual like Third Reich Nazis abroad.
Right. Yeah, right.
And then he's the one who allegedly was the informant for ADL and the non-sectarian anti-Nazi league, which to me, and who were, so the ADL almost immediately kind of blew his cover publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And the leader of the non-sectarian anti-Nazi league says that he was never really quite sure if he was playing them, and he suspected him some kind of a plan from the first moment. And then, after his cover was blown, then the leadership of the National Renaissance Party continues a relationship with him.
Yeah, that's important.
Has a public feud about whether he is or he isn't actually a communist informant. And the guy who claims publicly that he is also continues a relationship with him later on and visit him in prison and leaves him some money.
Right.
And he's also known for having fake feuds publicly with exactly those people that he feuded over Mana.
Right.
Like with Fred Weiss and so on. So that's one thing. The other is this whole like Kolgering, Vierek, Samroth.
I even forgot about that fucking subplot already.
Yes.
I was already like way in the Church of Peyote.
Yes, where
completely forgot there's a black book somewhere with God knows what in it.
Which is a weird story in itself, but are the Nazis somehow a part of it? We don't know exactly why.
Right, yeah. Anything close to Vierek is going to be layers upon layers of weird.
He, for some reason, Mana wants to discredit the main witness against this guy who's a part of this public scandal that involves this ring. And then this also involves other Nazis as well, somehow. It's very weird.
It is.
And, these are also people connected to Vierek, and we know what he was about and so on, also Semroth and so on. So this is like, I don't know. It's very strange. And then after that, there's this like peyote thing going on. So...
All right, here's what I'm going to say. For me, at least as far as my relationship goes to Truhill here, I'm going to try to figure out whatever Lawrence Dennis said about him. I'm just going to take that on face value.
Okay.
I think it's just simpler.
Yeah, I don't know what he said.
I kind of imagine him to be one of those annoying psychedelic dudes that kind of like, everything.
Yeah.
Like, Hitler's.
Yeah, we've even kind of known people a bit like that, So it rings very real, very true.
Like the annoying, the people that became like the conspiracy theory, drug dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now trying to kind of recap this, I didn't even mention the whole connection with the communists.
And sorry, I guess he opened the door maybe for that whole world of like psychedelic right wingers that we have nowadays.
It could have, or just opened another psychedelic door, aka your third eye.
Yeah.
What were you saying about the commies?
Yeah, the communists. Yeah. Which is, weird, but also that also kind of makes him a typical NRP member. No, that's what they were about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's interesting that
although he seemed a little bit more about it than some of the other ones, in that he was. Yeah, I guess maintained Jefferson School, maintained close friendships.
But then he would mention that as soon as he meets ADL or the Anti-Nazi League, he says, "I'm connected with the Jefferson School." It's almost like it's some kind of a cover for him,
or he's dumb enough where he's like, all of these guys are communists.
That's what I was
they
gonna
must
say.
all be also communists.
Exactly. So he's thinking because I'm talking to a Jewish guy, if I drop that I'm going to the Jefferson School, he's going to see that I'm
or that these anti-Nazi league people will always be communist no matter what, because people that are anti-Nazi are communists.
It does kind of read Nazi brain now,
right?
Yeah. Which is also possibly how maybe he was told by Fred Weiss to tell this, but
shit. Well, I mean, that could be true too. Fuck. I mean, what do we?
And it's interesting, that H.K. Thompson later on says, that he, like to Kevin Coogan, he says, no, he wasn't actually connected with the Communist Party because they wouldn't have a use for him. He was a drug addict and a thug and not important, but he was controlled by ADL and an anti-Nazi league.
I mean, everybody needs a useful idiot. There's always a market for that. So,
but I think that H.K. Thompson is not being truthful there. I think that he's like so too. He's playing still the role of the one trying to discredit him publicly. Although we know that after that he had a relationship with him and with all of the people that were close with him. So I think he's not being honest there. I think his relationship with the Stalinists was, I would say, more genuine than anything that he had with ADL or the anti-Nazi league.
Probably, yeah. Well, especially since you said his friend was he said his best friend was this guy Doxy Wilkerson, who's I guess a relatively important dude.
Yeah, he said that to Ed Fields.
Yeah, and taught at the Jefferson School.
Yeah. So I think he probably was a genuine kind of NRP member, whatever that means, because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And that he was a part of this clique with, Fred Weiss, H.K. Thompson, to some degree, Yockey and Madol.
Yeah.
And that he played a role for them, maybe trying to be a kind of a double agent, saying, I'm actually a communist, I want to spy on them for you, but trying to maybe discredit them, which is why immediately ADL kind of destroyed his cover publicly, which then resulted in a backlash from other Nazis trying to discredit Madol and NRP. And they for a time tried to defend him, because Madol knew if this is true, then Madol and Fred Weiss knew that he was not actually an informant, that they tried to do something stupid and failed. So they defended him for some time and then gave up.
And it's interesting to me that his, the Mana Pottery website, and that he kind of created, I guess, falsely this narrative of this World War II veteran, PTSD and stuff like that, instead of the fact that he was just doing weird insight roles in New York City in the 50s, probably also on drugs, and then, turned to making a peyote church after that.
Yeah.
One is a lot more of a kind of respectable trajectory than the other.
Yeah.
I'd assume that most, I don't know. You think Whoopi Goldberg knows that this dude was a Nazi?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, again, in this second attempt to recap his life, we also failed to mention Timothy Leary, which is also a part of the story. Yeah.
A big part. Yeah.
But just to point out on the Whoopi Goldberg thing, this is in fact a free episode. So
what?
Whoopi can learn.
Oh, yeah.
She's not a patron.
Oh, yeah.
She's definitely.
She runs. I said I want Mana Pottery to sponsor us.
Whoopi's definitely a free listener. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'll do the ad reads for Mana Pottery.
Yeah. I mean,
this is the, maybe, I know we've said it before, but this might be one of the better cinematic characters in that. I would watch this movie. I feel like it has enough kind of connections to all these, from Timothy Leary and the psychedelic world to George Sylvester Viereck.
Yeah.
The New York communist scene, Nazis.
This still very much gives me
Samuel Roth.
Yeah.
Insane. This still gives me J.K. Simmons at the end of Burn After Reading, if you've ever seen that.
Oh yeah.
Where the line was so what did we learn? I guess not to do it again if we ever figure out what it was.
Yeah.
That's a bit how I feel now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right. Cool.
Awesome.
So I guess the postmodern era has begun. And
well, I think Emmanuel Truhill
that's where we're going to be now.
Yeah, he was a good character for the first episode in the New Golden Age.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Absolutely, yes. Okay, guys. So that's right. So those of you on the free end that want to get in on, our kind of hopefully more consistent current events episodes we want to do on the Patreon, come on over, and we've got more crazy stories over there.
Indeed.
Other than that, I'm going to think about this story probably for the rest of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to start like hopeful. Furiously Googling shit.
Yeah. I mean, we all need time and silence after this.
Keyword search. Jerry Garcia, Hitler.
Yes. All right. Damn, Ray. You're bringing it with this
he's
fucking Renaissance party shit. Like
episodes lately.
This is a wealth of weirdness. Tenapod champions for sure.
We needed this after Hunter too.
God damn. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mana, too. You know what? Reaching out to him personally. Thanks for basically just doing pottery in the end. You know? Like no one had to die. He didn't like off a bunch of people or plant a bomb or burn a church or anything. He just fucking did drugs and made pottery.
Yeah. Yes.
So I guess he's, as far as this show goes, kind of a role model.
Yeah. There is a path you can go on and do some mescaline and make pottery. Yeah.
All right, Mana. Well, thanks for the weirdness.
Yeah.
See you later.
All right, see ya. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, all you free people enjoying your free episodes from The Empire Never Ended. Maybe scoot on over to patreon.com/tenepod and become a patron. We publish 3 additional premium episodes there alongside the 2 freebies each month. We're on Twitter too, also at Tenepod, but our Patreon is really where it's at. See you there, maybe?
They'll wake up one day and say, there will be.